Ray Calloway had been running Callaway's towing and recovery out of a gravel lot on Route 9 for going on 31 years. He knew every ditch, every guardrail, and every sharp curve in a 40-mile radius. He'd pulled Buicks out of cornfields, hauled semis off mountain shoulders in the rain, and once dragged a school bus mercifully empty from a frozen creek bed using nothing but chains, a come-along, and a whole lot of patience. Ray was not a man easily impressed, and he was not a man who spent money without good reason. So when his nephew Dale showed up at the yard one Thursday morning, grinning like he'd just won something, pulling behind his pickup a flatbed trailer carrying the most battered, rust-bitten, ugly old wrecker Ray had ever laid eyes on, the first thing Ray did was laugh. Not a polite chuckle. A real, full-chested, coffee-spitting laugh. "What in the world did you haul that in here for?" Ray called from across the lot, shielding his eyes against the morning sun to get a better look. The thing on the trailer was a 1950 Mack, a Model B, from what he could tell sitting low on flat tires, its boom arm frozen at a sad diagonal angle, its cab so oxidized it had gone from whatever color it once was to a uniform brown, the shade of dried mud. The winch cable was frayed at the end. The passenger door was held shut with a length of baling wire. One headlight housing was gone entirely. Dale hopped off the flatbed looking proud as a man could look. Found her at an estate sale over in Creston. Old fella named Bertram Howell owned her. His granddaughter was clearing the property. "You want to guess what I paid?" "I want to guess you got robbed," Ray said. $425. Ray took a long sip of his coffee. "Dale, son, you paid $425 for a pile of rust that probably can't be moved under its own power. She ran when they parked her," Dale said, which was the oldest used vehicle disclaimer in existence, and meant almost nothing. Ray walked around the truck slowly. Up close, it was worse in some ways and better in others. The frame looked solid heavy, old Mack steel that they genuinely didn't make anymore. The cab had surface rust but no deep holes. The boom mount, though frozen, was not cracked, and the block Ray peered through the missing headlight opening at the engine. The block looked original and intact. Mack the Modine diesel, if he wasn't mistaken. 6 cylinders. Old but overbuilt by design. "Where'd Bertram Howell get it?" Ray asked, still walking around. Granddaughter said he bought it new, drove it for his own towing business from about 1951 until he retired in 1979. After that, it sat in his barn. Ray did the math. The truck had been parked for roughly 47 years. He looked at it again. For sitting 47 years, it looked like it had been sitting 47 years. But the bones, he had to admit, were remarkable. The frame rails showed no twist. The cab corn. Ers were rough, but structurally present. The boom was a Holmes 485, a classic, well-regarded unit from that era. Heavy and reliable if it could be freed. "You towed it here because you want me to do something with it," Ray said. "It was not a question. I want us to do something with it," Dale said. "I figured we could restore it, get it running, make it our show truck. You always said you wanted something to take to the antique tow show in Columbus." Ray had said that years ago. He set down his coffee on the flatbed fender and crossed his arms. "All right," he said. "Let's get it off the trailer." That first afternoon, after they'd wrestled the old Mack off the flatbed using their modern underlift and a set of wooden ramps, Ray and Dale pushed it into the back bay of the shop. Under the fluorescent lights, the truck looked simultaneously worse and more interesting. The surface rust that had looked like total loss in the sunlight revealed, on closer inspection, intact paint underneath. In most places, a deep maroon red, original Mack color still clinging beneath decades of oxidation. The tires were past saving. The battery was gone. The fuel lines were crusted. But the glass in the windshield was not cracked. The gauge cluster on the dash was intact. The seat, while cracked and compressed, was all there. Ray got underneath with a light. The frame was clean. Cleaner than it had any right to be. Bertram Howell had apparently undercoated it at some point, possibly more than once, and the preservation was exceptional for an outdoor stored vehicle of this age. Ray tapped it with a wrench in several places. Solid. Not a hollow ring anywhere. He climbed back out and stood looking at the winch assembly. The main winch drum was a big unit, mounted just behind the cab, ahead of the boom. The frayed cable was spooled around it in a loose, messy way, like someone had unreeled it in a hurry and never wound it back properly. Ray took hold of the cable end and tugged. Something. G shifted slightly. The drum wasn't completely seized. "Hand me the breaker bar," he said to Dale. Dale handed it over. Ray fitted it to the winch drum's manual override port, still present, still accessible, and applied slow, steady pressure. The drum groaned. Then it moved. A quarter turn, then a half. Something was wedged. Ray crouched lower and aimed his light under the drum housing. He stopped. "Dale, come here." Dale crouched beside him. Wedged beneath the winch drum, tucked in the space between the drum housing and the frame crossmember, was a metal box. Not a toolbox. A small, flat, steel document, box the kind with a hinged lid and a simple latch painted black, now heavily tarnished. It was wedged in there as though it had been deliberately placed, not accidentally dropped. The cable had been wound over and around it in a way that made it nearly invisible unless you were directly underneath and looking for it. Ray worked the winch drum back with the breaker bar until there. E was enough clearance. Then he reached in carefully and extracted the box. It was heavier than he expected. Not dramatically heavy, but solid. The latch was not locked. He carried it to the workbench and set it down under the light. Dale said nothing. Ray said nothing. They both just looked at it for a moment. Ray opened the latch and lifted the lid. Inside, wrapped carefully in a piece of old canvas cloth, were documents. Ray unfolded the cloth and laid the papers out one by one. They were old, the paper yellowed and brittle at the edges, but intact. He picked up the first sheet and read it under the light. It was a letter, handwritten in a careful, deliberate cursive, dated June 14th, 1953. Addressed to a B. Howell from someone named Chester Mack, no relation to the truck manufacturer, seemingly a local man. The letter described a towing job Bertram Howell had done on the night of June 11th, 1953. A cattle hauler had gone off Route 9, the same Route 9 where Ray's lot now sat. Andy rolled into a gully. Bertram had been the one to pull it out, working alone, through the night, in the rain. The driver of the cattle hauler, a man named George Aldous Pembroke, had been pinned in the cab. Bertram had not simply hooked and pulled. According to the letter, he had used his winch line to stabilize the rolled cab first, preventing it from settling further onto the driver, then work the rig free in stages over 4 hours. Pembroke had survived. The letter was a formal written thanks from the County Road Commission, praising Bertram's skill and judgment. Ray set the letter down. The next document was a title, the original title for the 1950 Mack, issued to Bertram Howell, Creston County, with a purchase price listed. $3,200. New. A serious sum for 1950. The next was a hand-drawn map, a recovery diagram, Ray realized slowly. It was a sketch in pencil of a roadway with elevation markings showing a vehicle position, a wrecker position, and a series of numbered steps with cable angles noted, professional and precise. This was how Bertram had worked out his recoveries in advance. He'd diagrammed them, like an engineer. Ray looked up at Dale. "You have any idea what you bought here?" Dale was reading the letter over Ray's shoulder. "The truck? Not just the truck." Ray gestured at the box. "The whole record of a man's working life." There were more documents. A logbook, small, pocket-sized, every page filled with date, location, vehicle type, and a brief note on the recovery method. Hundreds of entries spanning from 1951 to 1979. Each one was a job Bertram Howell had done. Each one was a real incident, a real vehicle, a real person on a bad day who'd needed help. Ray flipped through slowly, reading entries at random. March 3rd, 1962 school bus, Route 12 ditch, left front wheels only, chain assist, no injuries, kids walked out fine. July 19th, 1967 grain truck, bridge abutment clip, severe front damage, winched backward, driver shaken but mobile. Number November 8, 1971 ambulance, ice on Mill Road, four-wheel recovery, coordinated with fire department. An ambulance. Bertram Howell had recovered an ambulance. At the bottom of the box, under the logbook and the documents, wrapped separately in a second piece of canvas, was a photograph. Black and white, slightly faded, but sharp. It showed the 1950 Mack looking almost brand new, its paint gleaming. The home's boom arm raised and cable taut on a rural roadway in what appeared to be winter, snow on the ground. In the foreground, Bertram Howell stood beside his truck. He was a compact, square-shouldered man wearing work coveralls and a wool cap. He was not smiling for the camera the way people usually did in photographs. He was looking at his truck. The expression on his face was the expression of a man looking at something he'd built a life around. On the back of the photograph, in the same deliberate cursive as the letter, "First winter with the Mack, pulled 11 rigs off Route 9 too. His season, not one lost." Ray stood at the workbench for a long time. They spent 4 months on the restoration. Ray brought in his machinist, a quiet man named Dov, for the engine work. The thermodyne diesel was seized but salvageable, the cylinders were glazed, the injectors gummed, the fuel system entirely rebuilt from scratch. Dov had a talent for old engines that bordered on intuitive, and over 6 weeks he brought the Mack's heart back from silence. The boom was freed with penetrating oil, heat, and patience. The home's 485 rotated smoothly once the pivot pins were dressed and relubricated. The winch cable was replaced with new 3/4-inch wire rope, properly spooled. The tires, a custom order for the correct size, took 3 weeks to arrive. Dale handled the bodywork. He was not a professional bodyman, but he was careful and willing to learn. He removed the surface rust with a wire wheel and rust converter, discovering beneath it, in most panels, that original maroon paint. He reserved what he could and matched what he couldn't. He did not try to make the truck look new. He tried to make it look like what it was. A well-maintained working truck of its era, given proper care. Ray took the document box and its contents to a local historian, a woman named Dr. Sandra Okoro at the County Historical Society, who spent 2 hours looking through everything with increasing excitement. She took careful photographs of every document with Ray's permission. She told him that the logbook alone was an exceptional primary source, a continuous first-hand record of commercial vehicle recovery operations spanning nearly 3 decades, in a region where almost no such records existed. She asked if Ray would consider donating copies to the historical archive. Ray said he would consider the originals, with the condition that Bertram Howell's family, specifically his granddaughter, be contacted and consulted first. Dr. Okoro agreed immediately. The granddaughter, whose name was Patricia, drove 2 hours to see the truck when Ray called her. She stood in the bay and looked at it for a long time without speaking. Then she looked at the document box and started crying quietly. Not dramatically. The way people cry when something they didn't know was gone turns out to still exist. "He never talked about it much," she said. "The work, I mean. He'd been retired for years before I was old enough to really understand what he did. I knew he'd had a towing business. I didn't know any of this." She gestured at the logbook. Ray showed her the photograph. She held it in both hands. "He looks happy," she said. "He looks like a man who knew what he was doing," Ray said. Patricia decided the documents should go to the Historical Society, with copies kept by the family. She asked Ray to keep the original photograph with the truck since it belonged there. Ray agreed. The Mack turned over for the first time on a Tuesday in October. Dov had gone through the starting sequence T. Weiss primed the system, checked the compression, and stood back while Ray turned the key. The engine coughed once, rumbled deep, coughed again, and caught. It ran rough for about 30 seconds. Then it smoothed out. The exhaust stack put up a black cloud, then cleared. The idle settled to a steady, low diesel lope that filled the shop bay and hummed through the concrete floor and up through the soles of Ray's work boots. Dale let out a yell. Dov permitted himself a small smile. Ray walked to the front and looked at it closely. The Mack's bulldog hood ornament present, intact, original, sat above the grille. The maroon paint was clean. The home's boom was straight. The headlights worked. The gauges worked. The winch engaged and released clean. The photograph was mounted inside the cab, on the dash, in a small wood frame. Bertram Howell and his truck in the snow. Not one lost. Ray had a sign made for the side of the Mack, just above the running board, in small white lettering. Howell. L. and Calloway Creston County Recovery established. 1951. Honoring the man who had driven these roads before him, worked through rain and ice and long nights, pulling people free, writing it all in a logbook, putting the logbook in a box, putting the box under the winch, where no one found it for 47 years. Ray took the Mack to Columbus in the spring. It won Best Working Restoration, 1945 to 1955. Old-timers stood at the truck, the way people stand at something that takes them somewhere unexpected. Two had known Bertram. One of them recalled being pulled from a ditch by that exact truck in the winter of 1968. "Old Bert," the man said, touching the fender. "He was something." "Yes, sir," Ray said. "He was." $425. The best money Dale ever spent.